I'll have it back to you by break. Or we could go over the quiz together. You got it. Do you use that as extra exercise later, or?
Not really.
Okay. Do you?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, well, we'll go over the exercises. If we still have questions, we'll go over the quiz, and then we'll start the next chapter. And it's really a short chapter and shouldn't be too difficult. But before we do that, I have gifts. I'd have one for Dale as well, but he's already got a critical edition of the New Testament. So
Thank you.
there you are. You'll have to share with your dad for now. Those are the only ones I had on my shelf.
He actually has two, so he's got
Okay.
one.
Okay, so then that's your personal copy then. That's what's
I
called
can read the
the.
first word. And! I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Wait, I get really excited over small things.
It's a big thing. You're starting to be able to learn the New Testament and be able to read it, even if it is and. That's the United Bible Society's 4th edition of the Greek New Testament. You can thank Scott Eichelberger and Mitchell and whoever else has passed along theirs to me, and now I'm distributing it to you because I've got plenty of critical editions. As a matter of fact, it helps me new shelf space for other books. That's good for me too. It's a win-win. You'll notice there that in the body of your text, you'll see the text itself, and then you'll have a little footnote, and at the bottom of that, that's what's called your critical apparatus, and it tells you what evidence supports different sorts of reading. That's way in front of us right now. I decided to go with the UBS 4, not just because of the fact that I've had extra copies of it, but because it signals what are deemed to be the most important for exegetical decisions, or decisions that affect translation in some sort of manner. Whereas the Nessel-Aland, which I prefer personally, has as much information as they can possibly cram into a footnote. So it has more than the UBS does. But this will give you a way of saying, if I want to do text criticism at all, these are some of the more important ones to look at. If we get to textual criticism, that's what we'll be looking at. But at the very least, you have a copy of the Greek New Testament now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And on that note, we'll go to less exciting things like paradigms and translation exercises. But it will build to the ability to read it.
I'm sorry.
Don't be.
You know how stupid I feel, and I'm looking at him, I actually recognize words in here. But, and.
Duh. All right, so we left off where? I'm always very bad at knowing where we left off.
We left off, our homework was 7 through the end.
7 through the end.
Yes,
Okay.
7 through 12.
Somebody want to take 7?
I will. Uthas oi ma thete lusanto tus doulos tu dikeu anthropou. Immediately the disciples themselves loosed the servants of the righteous man.
I may step out on a limb here.
Yeah.
Where are you getting the themselves from?
The book.
Really?
If you had a certain order, then you were supposed to add themselves, let's see, I don't remember where, because that was 2 weeks ago when I did this.
I would go with immediately the disciples destroyed or loosed the servants of the righteous man, because elusanta isn't middle, it's an aorist verb. If it were in the middle.
The answer is immediately the disciples themselves loosed the servants of the righteous man. So he had themselves in there. He had some little sentence somewhere. We can go on to the next one and I'll look for it.
Okay, well, if you find it, then correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, because there may be something I'm missing, but I wouldn't have added themselves there. He may be bringing out the fact that disciples is fronted in front of the verb, but
We haven't learned aorist passive yet, so our only option is aorist middle.
right. Oh, that is a middle.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a middle, it
Yes.
may be translated.
It is themselves.
Myself.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this class is already getting off to a
Good start.
a good start. I wonder if I can edit that out of the video. I don't think so.
We can start over again. We can
That's all right.
pretend. I'll reread.
No, it's okay. All right, so elusanta, and this is helpful for me because apparently I don't know my paradigms. We have epsilon and then the ta ending and the sigma. The epsilon and the sigma indicate aorist, right? Or the sigma alpha, and then the ta indicates middle because we haven't learned passive. So that gives us aorist, middle, indicative, third, singular. And you had the translation perfect. I did not. Immediately the disciples themselves loosed the servants of the righteous man. 8.
Want to take it or you want me to?
The apostles themselves received bread and fruit from the disciples.
The apostles themselves received bread and fruit from the disciples. Correct.
Now, why was it not the apostles were taking for themselves?
Right. I think this was one of the similar ones that we talked about before class. It's lob on ta. And let's walk through the same things we walked through last week. What's the first thing that signals to us something about this verb in parsing?
It's the epsilon.
The epsilon. So this tells us that it has to be either the imperfect or the aorist, right? You opted for the imperfect instead of the aorist.
Right.
And you did that because we did not see a sigma alpha. It's not there, right? But what is labanta from? What verb?
Levon, whatever.
Lambano. So we see in here, we drop the mu and we drop the alpha nu, and we just have lob. So it's undergone a pretty big stem change. And when a word undergoes a stem change like that, it's most likely a second aorist, which would transform it from instead of were to simply past tense. All right. 9.
Adamantha, Ton, Kyrion, Kai, Epistusamen, and Alto. Adamantha, is that to see or to give? Or something else?
It's not to give, and I'm trying to debate whether it's realized to know. It's to know, I believe.
That was
To s-
second aorist, that's to see.
It's second aorist of,
Horao is
hora.
to know.
so it's,
Yeah.
it's a second aorist of I see.
It is, I see.
Yep.
Well,
The adomethus
Yes.
is,
yes. It is a second aorist of to see, so we translate.
We saw the Lord, and we
Pistuo, not apostellon or pistello.
It's a form of belief.
Okay, believe, and we believed in him.
Now,
The only thing there would be that Adamatha has that in there.
So that would be,
So parsing, we've already determined that it's a second aorist. Aorist, what voice is it?
past.
um,
Well, so it'd be saw.
Right.
Middle.
Middle. Indicative. We haven't gotten to the passive for the aorist yet, that's today. So it's going to be an aorist middle. And so instead of saying we saw, it would be we ourselves saw.
Okay, so that was my question, was why do we have the ourselves in there?
Mhm.
Okay, the middle because the middle indicative.
Correct. Because it's middle. 10.
Let's see, Uda, Elalum, Oi, Duloi, Hupo, to Agatho, Agathu.
Agathu.
Agathu, okay. In this place, the servants had been loosed by the good man. I picked pluperfect passive,
Correct.
so I thought that meant had been loosed by the good man.
Yes. Yes.
So in this place, the
Yes.
servants had been loosed by the good man.
Trying to learn to think it out before I speak, but yes, that is correct. Here or in this place, the servants had been loosed by the good man, or the good one. Clear on that? It looks like it would be a perfect because we have the reduplication, but in our pluperfect we have the augment and the reduplication. So this would be your pluperfect passive because we have the on tie ending. Pluperfect passive had been. 11.
Utoi men. Egananta. Mathetai. Tu kuriu. Ekenoi de. Eti. Asan. Hamartoloi. On the one hand, these men became disciples of the Lord. On the other hand, those men were still sinners.
Good. So we have Eginanta from Ginamai, and it is a aorist, middle, indicative, but we don't translate it like a middle because it's one of our deponent verbs. So instead of saying it's an aorist middle, we'd say it's an aorist deponent. All right, and then 12.
Kyrios, Ain, Ingus, Aluk, Eblepata, Upa, Tone, Matheton, Autu. The Lord was near, but he did not see.
Not quite.
Okay.
Look at the word right after eblepata.
Upa,
Mm-hmm.
Upa.
That should help us. A lot of the times, upa follows your
Okay.
verb in a what kind of construction.
Passive.
Right.
But he was not seen by his disciples.
Even closer. Let's break this one apart. Lep, eta. And I think it really is a matter not of parsing, but of English. So we have what elements? First of all, what does it come from? Let's do it that way.
Lepo.
Blepo. Right. That's our stem, or our lexical form, blepo, in our parsing. What elements distinguish blepo from eblepita?
The pastime morphine.
Pastime morphine, epsilon augment, that means that it's either our imperfect or our aorist. So in limiting it from imperfect or the aorist, are there any other features in here that would indicate an aorist? Do we have a stem change?
No.
No. Do we have a sigma or an alpha?
No.
No. So it'll just be our regular old imperfect. We nailed the eta as being middle or passive, right? So we do truly have an imperfect. An imperfect has our endings of either middle or passive, but if you were, for instance, parsing this for a professor, we would have to choose in this context which one of those. Passive, because in the construction we have hupa, by. It tells us that it's not the middle sense, it's the passive. Imperfect, passive, indicative, 3s for the singular. Now, the only issue I had with translation was it's not simply he was not seen, he was not being. No. I have no issue with translation. I just wanted to parse. He was not seen by his disciples.
Because they have, the answer is, was not being seen by his disciples.
Yes, that was the issue I was having. I'm back and forth today. I'm telling you.
So
It is not a
the
good day
Lord
for
was
me.
near, but he was not being seen by his disciples is the answer. So where
Correct.
was the being come
The
from?
being is from the imperfect. Right after I got done parsing it for you correctly, I reverted back to thinking that it was an aorist for some reason, which is why I said that his translation was correct. But the whole point of doing this was to show that it was imperfect and not an aorist, so being needed to be in the translation. He was not being seen by his disciples. Sorry for that. There are some days when I'm on, and today is not one of those days. All right, just for the heck of it, let's do a walkthrough of the quiz. Do you want yours back and you can grade it? There you go. I'm sure you can figure it out, but just in case you haven't, the conjugation, 2 points apiece, 6 of them. Each word counts for 2 points, so if you get one little thing, if you had a translation issue on a verb, there are several components to that, so don't take off the full 2 points, take off some points. Your parsing is 1 point for each element. There are 6 elements: the lexical form, tense, voice, mood, person, and number. Vocabulary, 3 points apiece, and then you get 1 point for each Greek word at the end. All right, let's do it. And yes, I do realize that these are not fun quizzes by any means. Luo. We are supposed to conjugate luo in our imperfect, middle, and passive. Imperfect, middle, or passive. It's funny, I put those up there, but we still haven't gotten to it. For our imperfect, just to lay it out, our distinguishing marks that you want to add to this lu base is your epsilon plus the lu plus your primary middle passive endings. No, secondary middle passive endings. Secondary endings. Right? Ming, uta, MP endings. So first singular is lu, amen. Lu, amen. Next one is elu, u. lu. Third is e, lu,
Echo.
eta. Good.
Echo.
First plural is e, lu, amata. Second plural is e, lu, esta. And then our third plural is e, lu, anta. For the translation.
How do you know whether to say amen or truly, truly? I mean, it's got amen in parentheses here, so.
In this sense, it lends itself to
Or
truly,
is it-
truly,
is
amen.
Amen's at the end of the, usually at the end of a
Yeah,
sentence.
concurring with something as being true, but this one is, I mean, you could do both, but truly, truly makes more sense.
In English does.
Yes, it does. So our translation, amen, amen, ego, lego, soy, u erke, ekeno, to, tapo, hati, hitoimasata, auton, huper, tu diablu, kaiton, daimonion, autu. Truly, truly, I say to you, and let's go ahead and do our parsing as we go along, just for the heck of it. Lego is from Lego, right? Present, active, indicative, first singular.
And that's where it's, I say.
I say. Truly, truly, I say to you, you did or do not come. Erke is from Erkamai. Good. And it is a present deponent, and I'll accept this time middle or passive, but great. Indicative, second singular. You did or do not come in that place. Kano, to, tapo, in that place. Because, hati, hetoi masata, because he prepared it. And parsing it, hetoi masata is from hetoi magzo. Perfect. And it is a what tense?
Aorist, but could you spell the work still form?
I can. It is from hetoi magzo. That's a zeta. And we know it's an aorist because the epsilon in the front has augmented to an eta. And we have that this is from hetoi mod, right? And then a delta plus a sigma drops the delta, and we have massa sigma alpha. So it's an aorist, active, indicative, third singular. Because he prepared it for diabolu, the devil, and ton daimonion, his devils, or his demons rather. So that gives us our translation and parsing. Vocabulary, amen is truly. Axios is worthily. Ingus is near. Eke is there in that place. Euthus is immediately or at once. Exo is outside. Hutos is thus. Antate is always. Patin is when. And Hoda is here or in this place. And then for the real fun, we have our extra credit. I want to hear from all of you on this one.
Well, because it's the word of the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
the word has to be in genitive, doesn't it?
The word has to be in the nominative.
The nominative because it's the subject.
Right.
Okay.
Of the Lord has to be in genitive.
Okay.
All right, so the word is
Lagos.
logos. Now, if you wanted your extra point, it's the word, right? So, ha, logos. The word of the Lord. How would we do of the Lord?
To Korean.
To curry you. Good. The word of the Lord, and here's where it gets a little tricky, especially with the spelling, is was written. Was written. So we'll start with, wait, did I do something really mean to you?
Was
I did do something really mean to you.
wasn't
You're gonna-
perfect, isn't it?
No, this is this is an aorist passive. I was working on my preparation for this lesson this week, and I put that in there. That was mean. You'll get that point. You just count yourself an extra point there. That was because in the workbook it was being written, and I thought it would be easier to simplify it, and it really wasn't easier to simplify it. But it should be agrafe was written. I am sorry. You probably looked at that and was like, I don't know what to do with this. All right, upon the hearts of the sons. Upon. Epi. Now this was where I was kind of nice to you, because you could have gone in 3 different ways, right? Epi with the accusative, with the genitive, and with the dative all means upon. So in the following, it can be in the accusative, the genitive, or the dative. We could have, which way did you go?
Accusative.
Accusative. So it would have been what?
Tas kadias.
Tas car dias, right? Now it could have also been, as I said in the genitive, it would have been tone car dion, and it could have been in the dative, which would have been tais car diis. Any of those would work. And then to finish it all off, of the sons is tone we Alright. Let's see what that is managing well. And are we ready for the next chapter? I hope that gave us a little extra practice.
I only need to hear the translation part.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. All right, so we've got the aorist passive and the future passive. This will conclude the indicative mood. Big deal for us. Yes.
4 more to go.
Don't discourage.
In fairness, those 4 to go become simpler and simpler. Less tenses are in the rest of those, and it's not 4 to go. It's only 3. It's the imperative, the subjunctive, and the optative. The optative we virtually don't even learn. The imperative has much fewer tenses, and the subjunctive is really easy because it just is mostly the same endings, and you just lengthen your ending. So there are difficulties that come with those, but so far as learning those compared to the indicative mood, we're good. It's when you get to the participle and the infinitive that you want to tear out your eyes. I know, I'm sorry. All right.
One of your spiritual gifts.
I hit you hard up front, and then I try to smooth blow as we go. Here's the way that you can remember this. This is a mnemonic device that's always stuck for me for your aorist passive, your future passive. It doesn't apply for the rest of your passives, but for these two it does. Aorist passive and future passive. They, theta, eta, they are passive. They are passive. And the reason is because you're going to have a theta, eta that characterizes almost all of your conjugation. The tricky thing about our aorist passive is that instead of using middle and passive endings, we're going to use secondary active endings. It's the only one that does that. Our secondary active endings were on, s, in, amen, eta, on, or just in, nu, sigma, nu, or nothing, min, te, n. So we'll take lu. Here we have lu, our base form, all the way through, just like always. For the aorist, we add what?
Epsilon.
An epsilon, right? We always add our epsilon to the aorist in the indicative mood. Epsilon, epsilon. So now we have a lu. Then, based upon this little mnemonic device, we're going to add what? Theta, eta. Elu, the. The. And then we just go through and add our endings. Nu, sigma. Remember, this could have been a nu or nothing. And here we'll just put nothing because we want to distinguish between eluthane and eluthe. If we had put the nu on the end there, it would make it the same. So we drop the nu entirely. Eluthane, eluthe, seluthe, eluthemin, eluthe te, eluthane. Or is it thesan? Yeah, they opt for the son here to distinguish it. So we had on or son or son as our alternate endings. So thesan. It's not so bad. I don't think. And how do we translate this? Try the first singular.
I was loosed.
I was loosed, or I was destroyed. You were destroyed, he, she, or it was destroyed, we were destroyed. You, plural, were destroyed, and they were destroyed. Perfect. Now where this gets to be a little less fun is obviously your second aorists, right? Your second aorists are never fun. And more become second aorists in the aorist passive than would have necessarily been in the others. You just sort of have to know and recognize. So take, for instance, grapho. It wouldn't be a graphane, it's just a graphane. We've dropped the theta. But we still have our augment, tells us it's aorist, and we have these funky active endings that don't have your sigma alpha that should tell you that it's the passive. Future passive. start with lu, as always, right? What are we going to do from there? Take guesses. Don't look at answers.
Well, when we had the verbs that were in the future tense, we added the sigma in the middle. Do we do that here?
We will, but the only thing is that theta eta is going to take precedence. So it's going to go first.
Okay.
So it's lu, the. Lu, the. And then we will add our sigma. And then we will add our middle passive endings. My, a, tie, metha, the, tie. Lu, the, samai. We still need our connecting vowel. Lu, the, se. Lu, the, setai. Lu, the, samatha. Lu, the, sesta. Luthe Santai. There's a lot that's been added on these, and sometimes it might be difficult to conjugate them. I'll see if I'll leave conjugation out for you next time. I'll think about it. I'll let you know what I come up with. But the good thing is they have very distinctive and recognizable elements. You have the theta eta, which screams they are passive. You still have the epsilon for the aorist, and you still have the sigma for the future. So you should be able to look at this and say, there's a theta eta added, there's a sigma there, future passive. This would be translated as I will be loosed, will be destroyed. You will be loosed, ye, she, or it will be loosed, we will be loosed, you will be loosed, and they will be loosed.
And what did you call those endings again?
Those are your primary middle passive endings. We had my saitai or my atai, methodus, the untai as our primaries. Our secondaries were main, u, ta, methodus, the anta. You also have your second future passives. That's what that little chart on 102 is. Graphe samai. So you see that the theta has dropped out just like it did with grapho in its aorist passive. It wasn't graphane. It was a graphane. Here it's not graphesamai, it's graphesamai. And you can tell that that was phonetically decided, at least in that instance. The two aspirated or TH, FH sound together. We didn't like it. We don't like it either. Take, for instance, the word amphitheater, right? How's it spelled? Amphitheater, right? It's spelled amphi. So we don't like the dual aspiration there. So we drop in pronunciation the H and we just pronounce it amphitheater. You know, Greeks do the same thing in certain instances. They just don't write it out. They deaspirate. The last thing you need to know about this chapter, and it's going to trip you up if you don't know it, so do pay attention, is that last chart on this, on page 105. Take, for instance, ago. It will drive you nuts. What's happening here is we have I can get rid of this so I can do it. Argo. He tells you there that the kappa, the gamma, the chi, when you add the theta from the theta eta, it becomes a chi theta. With a p, a beta, and a phi added to the theta, you get phtha. That will be one of those instances where they opted for it as opposed to against it. Tau, delta, theta, plus a theta equals a sigma theta. So let's take augo for instance. Our stem is aug. We want to add a augment to it in order to make it aorist. And what happens when we augment an alpha?
Turns into an eta.
Turns into an eta. So now our base is ag. Now we're adding the theta eta. And what happens when a gamma crosses paths with a theta? Becomes a chi. So ake, A. Becomes chi theta, I'm sorry. Ake the. And then you add your ending, so ake thane.
It's a long way from Ago.
Yes, it is. There's another way to do it, and that's just to memorize that augo becomes ake thane in the aorist passive. Or you memorize those rules, which helps to explain more instead of memorizing by rote the principal parts for all the other verbs. But this is a big culprit because for instance, baptizo, you can recognize that lexical form when it becomes a baptiste, right? It's not that big of a deal. But with augo, your root word is only alpha and gamma. The alpha goes away because of the augment, the gamma goes away because of the conflicting letters, and then you've got nothing that is recognizable from your stem. That's a particularly bad one.
And that translates as what?
This is I was led. And then we will do vocabulary, take a quick break, and come back and get lots of parsing experience with this. Well, you don't have any vocabulary really this week. This is all learning your first aorist passive indicative principal parts. You don't, if you know how to conjugate them, then you're fine. You don't learn any new vocabulary. If you don't know how to conjugate them, then this could be a help. So we'll walk through it. Aigthane is I was led. Acousthane is I was heard. Eblathane was I was thrown from Balo. Ebaptisthane, I was baptized. Eginethane, I became from Ginamai. Egnosthane, I was known from Ginosko. Edidocthane, I was taught from Didasco. Edoxasthane, I was glorified from Doxoxo. Hetoimasthane, from Hetoimagzo, I was prepared. Ekerukthane, I was preached from Keruso. Elamphthane, I was taken or I was received from Lambano. Elaphtane, I was left from. Can you help me out here?
I don't remember.
Lipon is one of the aorist forms, one of the lexical.
Lipon is Lapo, yes. Very good. Both of you. Team effort.
That's right.
Epasthane, I was trusted from Patho. Epimphane, I was sent from Pimpho. Epareuthane, I went from Paruamai. Esothane, I was saved from Sozo. And Ophthane, I was seen from Harao. Yeah, so it would be do you well to become familiar with those. You don't have to memorize them, but become very familiar with them. Some of them aren't bad at all. Some of them are a lot worse. All right, take a break. Exercise number 1.
Hoi Mathentai, Edidak Thesan, Kuba, Ton Apostolon to Curio. The disciples
They're doing something teaching. But it's got the thigh and the eta, the theta and the
Good,
eta.
all right. Now we're going to do the same thing we did 2 weeks ago, right? So we have Edidak Thesan. Like I said, I'm not on today. San. That out. What's it from?
Dasco.
Good. Didasco. Didasco. And just for a reference point, it in its base means to teach. Good. Now, what characteristics do we have?
Epsilon.
Epsilon. So this will tell us it is either a imperfect or an aorist. All right, we're going to keep on doing that. We're going to whittle these things down. Going further, what else do we have?
Face.
Face.
Or they.
Or they.
Plus.
The sigma is going to be a part of your ending, so let's. So here's our root. A. And the they, what do we do with the they?
They are passive.
They are passive, so we've already identified our voice, passive. And do our theta etas go with imperfects?
No.
No. When we started going over this lesson, I said when you see a theta eta, it can only be with one of two tenses. It can be with the aorist or the future. And in this case, it is going to be the aorist. Now we have aorist. We might get a little bit tripped up if we don't start at the beginning of the word because we see the sigma here, right? Theta eta sigma would be future passive. But futures cannot have past time or augments or morphemes. Good, so we have aorist passive. This is a default. We don't have anything else yet. Indicative. And the son ending is what person number?
Third plural.
Third plural. Good. Now we've parsed it. And since we've parsed it, let's transform this before we go back to our exercise, and then we'll fill in from there. To they were taught. Obviously, this they can be substituted by a nominative in the sentence, and we've already found one of those. So going back,
The disciples were taught by the apostles of the Lord.
perfect. Give it a second. Anybody have questions? Good up on the board? I'll leave the space for the next one. Okay, number 2.
Hoi lagoi ton propheton agrapheson en tais graphais. The words of the prophets.
Good. And we'll pause there, because I know you'll just be able to do it. But grapheson is from
Grapho.
grapho. Good. Class? what do we see starting from left to right?
Well, you got the epsilon,
Which means it can be
either imperfect or aorist,
perfect or aorist. Of course, this is a pointless exercise because we know that
and
we've
not
covered.
future.
Yep.
Alright. And then you've got the theta and the eta.
We don't have the theta because grapho is our, this we
Oh,
can go
okay,
ahead and
that's
answer it. But yes, we have the eta here, which tells us that something might be missing. The theta is missing because it's the second aorist. So we've eliminated this as an option. Now we have the aorist. We have what would be the theta eta, and we would say they are passive, aorist, passive, and then our ending tells us what?
Third person plural.
Third plural. Great. Grapho we said meant to write, and now that we have all of this information, we can transform to write to
Or written.
good. They were written. And we've already found our nominative as you were translating to begin with. The words of the prophet.
Or written in the scriptures.
Yep, that could be in the writings, in the scriptures, either of those.
Or written in the writings of the summary book.
Yeah. Good. Did I hear you just say ketuvim?
I did.
I thought you did.
I'm mumbling under my breath.
Ketuvim is the, you've got what's called the Tanakh, and that's the Torah, that's what the T stands for in the acronym Tanakh. You have the prophets, which are the,
Navi or Naveen, I don't know.
yes, Navah, I think, and then you have Ketuvim, which mean writings, which is the other part of the Tanakh. Tanakh is a Jewish or a Hebrew way of memorizing that you have the law of the prophets and the writings. Sorry for the excursus. Couldn't help it hearing it though.
Yeah.
Number 3.
The pen, I don't know what to do with the PH and the TH together.
A pemphthason.
Okay. Pemphason, oi, apostoloi, ace, ton, cosmon.
Perfect.
And
And what is a pemphthason from?
I'm assuming pemphason?
Good. Pempo. Very good. Pempo. And that means basically
Descend.
to sin. Good. And then looking from left to right, what do we see about the word?
Well, you've got the eta, so it's the aorist or the imperfect.
Or perfect. Good. And then we see what else?
Well, there is the theta and the eta together this time.
Good. Theta and eta, and that tells us what?
That it's a passive.
Good. They are passive. And now that we know that we have the theta eta, it eliminates the imperfect as an option, so we have the aorist. Aorist passive, don't have anything else but the indicative yet. We have son as our ending, and that gives us
Third person plural.
third plural. If we were to transform to sin to what we have here, it is
The apostles were sending.
or not sending. We're sending would make it an imperfect.
Yeah. Sent.
Good.
To the world.
The apostles were sent into the world. Good. All right, 4.
Diantes agapes tu veu hamartolos esope kai egenethe, athetes tu curio.
Good.
Through the love of God, the sinner,
All right, and let's pause.
okay,
I'm sure you can make it out, but sothe is from
sozo,
sozo and means
to save,
to save. Good. What do we find?
epsilon, so it's
Epsilon.
aorist or perfect.
Good. I doubt we're going to see a single imperfect in this chapter. And then what else do we see?
Theta, eta,
Theta, eta. So imperfect is gone. We have aorist.
they are passive.
They are passive. They are aorist passive. Theta, eta is also going to serve as our person number suffix because we don't have one, right, on SN or nothing. So what does that make that since there's nothing there?
Third singular.
Good, third singular. Transform this from to save to
It's, he was saved.
perfect. Was saved. And going back, and we might, since we have that information, transform the way you did dia.
Well, somebody else used this book and they wrote by,
Yes.
so I kind of had a little help there.
We have three different ways of expressing agency. One of them was hupa. That's one of the most common ways. It's the direct agent. Dia is indirect, I believe, or impersonal. I forget. I'll have to go back and look at those. But you can express by hupa, dia, nothing, or even in. In is rare. It's a Semitism.
So it'd be by the love of God, the apostles are saved. I mean, the sinner is saved. Okay, I'm getting tripped up here. The sinner was saved, and again, name is going to be Gnosko.
Not quite.
I don't know.
That would have been my guess.
Yeah, it's from ginamai. If it were gnosko, it would be egnosthe, I think, or egnothe. Egnosthe. It's on. You'll be able to look at those on page 105. Those are two that are very similar that you want to take note of. So your first aorist of gnosko is egnosthane, and your first aorist of ginamai is what you see there. It's egenethe.
So it means I became.
Good. So the
So,
sinner was saved
and
by the
I
love of
be-
God
and became a disciple of the Lord.
good. Why isn't it? And he was become a disciple of the world, of the Lord. Well, I guess I didn't work in English, but it's a Greek thing I'm getting at. Ginomai is what type of verb? Deponent. Good. So we translate it actively. And became a disciple of the Lord. Good. Should I test our knowledge a little bit?
Sure.
All right. So egenethe, and he became a disciple of the Lord. What case is mathetes? Ooh, not quite.
Gender.
No. You want to think it's genitive because of the ace ending, don't we?
I do.
This is a masculine noun according to the first declension. One of those weird ones. So this is a nominative. Why is it a nominative? He became a disciple.
There is a form of noun in the first declension where they've got the 5 paradigms or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, under a masculine noun, has a feminine ending for nominative, single of alpha sigma.
Mm-hmm. Why is it ace though, and why isn't it in the accusative? Why is it a nominative and not an accusative?
Because it's to be a verb.
Yes, good. So what we have, and this is a very technical $10 word, I guess you'd say, what are called copulative verbs. Those are to be verbs, like I am good, I am red, I am small, right? Or I became red. Those all are called predicate relationships. So you are predicating something about I, or predicating something about he. He did what? He became a disciple. So it would be in the nominative case as opposed to in the accusative. You translated it right. I'm sure you translated it right a million times and not need to know any of that. So 5.
Ta euangelion ekeru the entoplasma.
Good.
There's not a nominative, so he was preached? No.
Something the gospel was preached
All right,
to the
let's-
world.
Let's do this, and we will clarify the murkiness in a moment. All right, so we have Eke Rukhthe. It is from
Jerusalem.
K. Russo. K. Russo means preach. Good. Going through, we find what? Epsilon. Imper for aorist. I know this is getting redundant. I apologize. What else do we see?
And Ada.
Theta. Eta. And we say
They're
they.
passive.
They are passive. So we have passive. Since we had the theta eta, imperfect is gone. We have aorist, passive, indicative. We don't see any person number suffix, which tells us that it is what person number?
Third singular.
Third singular. Transform this to
Was preached.
was preached. And that's good because we don't know what the subject is yet. All right, so something. He, she, or it was preached. Debbie was on to something. You said something. You said
Gospel?
yes, the gospel. Ta euangelion. That is a neuter. Mhm. So that form could either be the accusative or the nominative, but we don't have a nominative. So test it out. Say the gospel was preached.
In the world.
Good. Six. We have to do 2 verbs.
Anybody know what the first word is?
Yeah, it's going to be, if somebody gets that one, I'll give you a Greek New Testament.
Can I circle mine?
Wait, I already did. But now?
I circle mine?
Yeah, nice. How'd you know? You
Just-
learned it.
Yeah, because I'm in Greek 3 right now. All right, where's my
what's
Great
the
New
word?
Testament?
Acericomai. Here you go,
Okay.
3rd edition. I don't know how much help it'll be to you. It's not even current. Aesalthaman, it's from Acericomai. Our second aorist of Ericomai is Aelthon.
So, nobody's still told me what the word means.
Oh, you were looking for the meaning. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I thought you were still confused about the
Nope.
stem. Ericomai means to come, and adding ace in this case, it happens to work out great. I come in, or I enter. All right, and then if we were to go ahead and break this word apart,
All right. It usually starts with an eta. Is there a rule about not double aiding it or turning it to a?
yep, it's already been
anything?
lengthened, so that's.
Okay.
But we don't need that information. It has gone from Ericomai to Aelthon, which tells us that the root has changed significantly. And what tenses does that typically happen in?
Second aorist.
Second aorist, right? But we don't need the information about it being a second aorist. We can just operate on it being an aorist, because they mean the same thing. And then how about our voice?
Present. Or active.
Yeah, no.
I mean, there's the theta in there.
Well, the theta though is,
It's
this
part
is,
of the word.
it is.
So,
It's Aelthon. So the theta there is a part of our new principal part for the aorist. What makes us want to think it's passive, and we have this pesky little thing here. This is the only thing that sort of tips us off with the way that we've been working to help us on voice. Remember, second aorists, though, do not have our normal endings. They take our active endings, or they take our secondary active endings, onis in, ominet, on.
all right, so we enter?
We enter, yes.
Okay.
When it comes down to it, this whole big game here for Acericomai, it doesn't really matter because of what? Just need to, the opponent. Just need to remember that it's the opponent. And our ending?
We, no,
Yes, we.
Okay.
First plural.
yeah, that's right. Lucid is third.
So we enter. Or
We would.
interred. Sorry.
We wouldn't use usin here. Would we?
Usin?
Yeah.
Why would we do that? To say they entered?
Yeah.
No.
Because that would be,
Honest and omineta on.
yeah.
Yep. So we'd use the secondary, not the primary.
Right.
Okay, I've forgotten what the glacia is. Is it church?
It is?
Okay. So, we entered into the church
Mm-hmm.
and we baptized?
Close. Let's do it over here. This is supposed to be an Anabaptist thing. It's from
Baptist, or,
baptizo,
yeah.
which means to baptize. We find epsilon, and I won't even write it out. It's imperfect or aorist. What else do we find? theta eta, which tells us
Passive.
they are passive. If it's got theta eta, then it eliminates imperfect as an option, giving us just the aorist, passive, indicative. And we have the min ending, which tells us what about the person number?
Plural I.
First plural. We. And now that we have that, we can transform to baptize, and this is the rest of the sentence for you too.
I have a hard time with what that means.
Which part?
Passive. I'm just turning it into an aorist passive.
Yeah, so you said with your translation, we baptized, right?
Right.
That's active because we are the ones doing the baptizing. Thinking about me now as a pastor, I baptize somebody. But the passive would be the subject being acted upon.
So we were baptized?
We were baptized, right. The subject is not acting, he is being passive, something is being done to him.
All right, so we entered the church and were baptized.
All right, let's do one more. And I won't write up parsing up here, and we'll see if we can do that just by recognizing now.
And Akene te Emera Akusthesatai Lagas tu Pepu. In there, the day, we
I can tell you have learned other pronouns. Try akanos or akane one more time. Not there.
in this,
If it were this, it would be in taute. That would be the near
this is,
demonstrative. This is the far.
in those,
Singular.
in that,
Yes. Got it.
in that day,
Good.
Thai, they will hear, they have heard.
Not quite. You're on the right track in a lot of different places and couple little places off. So let's do this together. We'll walk through it. Not up here though. Akusthesatai is from.
Akuo.
Akuo. Good. Do we see anything at the front of the word?
No.
No, we do not. Do we see anything anywhere else? We see the theta eta, which tells us it's going to be passive. What do we see after the theta eta?
Sigma.
A sigma.
Future.
Good. So this is the first future passive we've seen in our exercises, and I'm sure for the homework you're going to see a lot more. Seems to arrange them that way. So it is a future passive indicative, and then you saw the tie, and you jumped to third person plural. What would we need for it to be third person plural? On time.
On time. Okay.
Mae tai, meta ista on time. But here we have tie, which means you got the third right, you just had the number wrong. So third singular. So translate that word by itself without any reference to anything else in the sentence.
He will hear. He will be heard.
Good.
In that day, the word of God will be heard.
Perfect. Good. Very, very good. I'm happy. We're moving along well, and we just completed the indicative move. So be incredibly impressed with yourselves. That's a huge chunk of learning right there. Next time we meet, forget how I have this. Do I say that we do chapter 16 together? Because this is important for me to know and for you to know. Because I think we do skip chapter 16. We don't. We review it.
So homework will be 8 through 15?
8 through 15. And I'm debating here. It is a hard debate. Do we go through chapter 16 together as a class, or do I have you read 16 and we move to 17? 16 is sort of what we've been doing ever since we started back up, which is taking a look at all of the conjugations from the indicative mood. There's no vocabulary for it, and it walks through all of the morphemes that we've been drilling up here. But having that time would give us more time to work together and to get up to speed, and also maybe use the second half of class to look at something else. I'll decide a little bit later. I'll let you know via email.